So I'd like to preface this video by saying I am not finished with all the buildings for my game. I still need 2 more, one here and one here. But as I've made all the buildings that I need for the story to work, I'm planning on putting a poll on my Discord in the coming days with options for what those buildings could be. Now, for the past month, I've been working daily on making buildings for my game. I've even done 2 live streams of me solely working on the buildings, and I've finally finished all the important ones. So in today's video, I want to go through what I've learned from making all these buildings, and I want to show how I've made a few of the more challenging buildings work. First, I'd like to do a bit of housekeeping. As some of you may have noticed, I have changed my channel name to Sir Mr. Doodlebee. I felt like I wanted to make this change because, while it was a good name, GameMakerJ was a bit boring. It was literally what I did and my initial, so I wanted to make the name into something a bit more personal, something that meant something to me. GameMakerJ was literally the first thing that I came up with when I was making my YouTube account. I was really debating if I wanted to change the name, but I had been thinking about it for a while, and I thought that I might as well change it now before GameMakerJ gets stuck as my name forever. Whether you refer to me as my old name or my new one or some shortened nickname of either, I don't care. But I want to make this change, and I like that now my channel name has a connection with myself. Anyway, let's get on to the buildings. The first thing I learned when making the buildings is standardize. Many of my buildings use similar parts, the main one being the arrow that you see when you're able to enter the building. Standardizing the speed, the amount of frames, and how I made it disappear made it really easy to make a ton of them. If each time I made a new arrow, I made it run at a different FPS, and sometimes made it disappear with an animation, and sometimes made it disappear with the visibility toggle, it would have been a pain to do because I would have to make it up on the fly for each arrow. Instead, after experimenting to find the right settings, I used those exact same settings for each subsequent arrow, making my life much easier in the long run. Similarly, a lot of the code I made used the same variable names and basic structure. The code for entering the building is always before the code for leaving the building, and then the code for the characters connected to the building comes last. The variable names for entering the building and the variable names to see if the player are in the building are all the same for each building. This is important because it allowed me to not have to worry about messing around with the configuration, and let me get into the more fun art and design. The next thing I learned was that for larger buildings, it's okay to split them into smaller parts. Now, I learned this much too late to be useful to me now, but it's still good to know for the next time I make a game with buildings or other large parts. This mostly came into play with the inn, which is one of the harder buildings that I'll break down later. But to use as my example, it has 3 different rooms and a check-in area. I could have made the whole thing all in one sprite and just chosen which part to show and hide at a time. But instead, I broke each part down, so I made the check-in area, the 2 occupied rooms, and then the 1 open room that you check into at the start of the game. Then, when I programmed the building, I put them all in one scene, but I programmed each one individually. It's really similar to breaking down one big task into lots of little tasks. It allowed me to not have to worry about making each part all at once, but instead made it so that I can do one part at a time, which reduced stress in completing all the buildings, but also allowed me to easily split up work between multiple days. The last thing that I learned while making buildings was that, at least for me, live streaming helped. The live streams that I did made it super easy for me to just sit down and get work done. If I was live, I couldn't get distracted by pulling up YouTube or a video game. That's why in the past month, I've done many more game development live streams than I normally do. It also allowed me to document my progress easier, as I didn't have to remember to record all of the off-stream stuff because I had a ton of content from the streams, as you can see from this background footage. So that was 3 lessons I learned from making these buildings. Now I want to go into some of the more challenging buildings, and I want to show how I made them work. First, as I said before, is the inn. This one is probably the most annoying and painful one of the buildings I made. The main issue with this one is how many checks it needed. There were checks for if they had signed into the building, if they were in a certain hitbox, if they had the key, if they knocked one of the doors. It was just a lot to keep track of. As I said before, the way I managed this was splitting each part into a different task and then making subtasks for that. This made it super easy to only worry about one thing at a time. The inn is also going to have a lot more going on in the full game because it marks the end of the tutorial. in that it shows the player how to navigate the world, how the controls work, and along with the station, it shows the player how to interact with characters. After you check into the inn and go to sleep for the first night, you have to go back to the train station, and then you get the main quest for the game. The next building that was annoying to make was the warehouse. Now, because I don't want to give away too much about the plot, I'll just say that it meant I had to change a ton of dialogue and configure more in-game checks to see who you have talked to, and also to make sure that all the things are set up. Again, without giving away too much, it also means that I had to make the police station because a cutscene relating to the warehouse had a police car in it. Again, that will only show up depending on who you talk to, which makes the current and future programming of this building relate to a lot of checks to determine what will happen, and it will also involve a lot of copying pasting assets from one cutscene to another, just with slightly different things depending on who you talk to. The last building that gave me some trouble, although I did it a while ago, was the hospital. It's annoying because of all the levels. This is a multi-floor building, so to make it work, I needed to add a ton of collisions. Now, the issue with that is that while you're outside the building, those collisions still happen. You don't see this with other buildings, because I intentionally didn't add any to them because they were a pain to work with. I ended up solving it by messing around with the collision layers, but still, it really wasn't fun to deal with. If you want to see exactly what I did, on one of the building streams I worked on the police station, and it had something similar that I had to fix. But because it had all been so long ago, I had to relearn how to make the collisions work. Some of the collisions in the hospital are still broken, as you can see, but these are due to different issues with the player hitbox. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please like and subscribe because it really does help me. Thanks for watching, and have a good day.